guys, what's up? Welcome back to my channel. I'm Ivy, and today I'm going to be talking about The Maze Runner by James Dashner. So this book follows Thomas, and he is around 16 years old, and one day he wakes up in an elevator and he cannot remember anything except for his first name. So he ends up in this place called the Glade with a bunch of other teenage boys, and it turns out that none of them can remember anything, and they are trapped inside this ever-changing maze with creatures called grievers in it, and if you ever get stuck in the maze at night, no one has survived. So the doors close at night, and no one has survived being out in the maze at night, so they are ever trying to escape this maze. So we have a pretty cool cast of characters. There's Thomas, who shows up, and he's very brave and determined to get out. Like, no matter what, he must escape this place, and I like him for that, you know? And then there's Minho, which he's my favorite character. He's the head runner, and the runners are the people who go out and explore in the maze and try to find a way out. And he is so smart and clever, and he's also brave, although at first not really, but you know, it's okay. But Minho is my favorite. He's so funny and just sarcastic, and I love him so much. And then there's Albie and Newt, and they're like the leaders, and they're like rough on the outside, but they really want what's best for the group. And then there's Chuck, this 12-year-old, the youngest kid in the Glade, and he's like so lonely and sad, but he loves Thomas, and they have such a cute friendship, and I love it. It's so adorable. So adorable. Okay, so at this point in the video, I advise you to leave if you have not read this book yet, and honestly, I would recommend this book as long as you like dystopians and gore and blood, and yeah, it's good. It was very fast-paced, and it was good. Okay, so let's start spoiling. There we go. So Teresa shows up, and I was like, okay, that's a little strange. I knew going into it that a girl would show up, but she was in a coma, and then she was like, she had the note that said, like, I'm the last one, this is the beginning of the end or something. And then Thomas goes out in the maze after Albie and Minho, and I was like, no, Thomas, you idiot, but at the same time, I was like, yes, it's about to get really good. And so he saves Albie by doing the vine thing, and then he and Minho end up surviving somehow, and they watch the grievers fall off the cliff, and immediately I was like, they have to jump off the cliff to get out. I'm like, come on, it's obvious, like, the cliff is how they're gonna get out of this maze. But they were just like, whatever. So then they go back to the Glade, and then Thomas can speak to Teresa telepathically, and I was not sure how I felt about that at first. I was like, wait, what? Is this magic or something? But then later I figured out that it was actually, like, scientific instead of just, like, magic, because that would have bothered me. Magic is not, like, this book isn't magical, so that would have been bad, but it's, like, so scientific, like, it's very scientifically advanced, so that made it okay for me. And so I like Teresa. Yeah, I like her. She's cool. Anyways, so they figure out, Thomas anyway figures out that the maze, Teresa and Thomas figure out that the maze is a code that they need to solve. Oh yeah, and Gally disappears. I was like, good riddance. And they figure out that they need to do the code thing, and then the doors don't close. And I was like, oh boy, it's gonna get even better. So then the grievers came, and they start taking one kid at a time. Like, each night they take one. And then Thomas purposely gets stung so he can go through the changing to remember some things, because he was like a part of the wicked thing. So he goes through the changing, and this is what bothers me about this book, is when he goes through the changing, nothing happens. It's literally just, it skips right over it. And I was like, what? The changing had so much hype, and like there was so much, like, every time like the changing was mentioned, it was like so, like, it's so painful, it's terrible, like, no one's ever the same, and they just skip right over it. What the heck? I mean, it bothered me, okay? Just like, and also I thought you should try taking the grief serum without even being stung, because you might not even need to be stung to go through the changing. Like, why don't they think of that? I don't know. Anyways, So he goes through the changing, and then he suddenly knows how to do everything because he remembers. So he, like, does the code. They figure out that it's words. So then they know that they have to go through the Griever hole. And so the big battle happens, and Albie sacrifices himself because he went a little crazy. And that was sad. I was like, okay, I didn't like Albie too much. But so he sacrifices himself, but it turns out that that didn't do anything because the Grievers attack anyway, and like half of the kids die. And Teresa puts in the code, and they shut down the Grievers, and they escape the maze, only to find themselves in this science lab with all the scientists. And then Gally's there, and he's being controlled by them, and he lunges at Thomas with a knife, but he ends up stabbing Chuck instead, and Chuck dies. And I was so sad. I don't know why, but it made me so sad because Thomas promised him that he would get him home to his parents, and they find out that they're orphans, and then Chuck gets stabbed. It's terrible. Just absolutely terrible. And Thomas feels so terrible about that. And then they get rescued by the whatever that you can call them, and they go to like the dorm place, and Teresa is taken to a separate room, and they are safe for now. They feel safe. But then in the epilogue, what happens? I forget how much it reveals in the epilogue. Let's see. I don't know, but in the epilogue we find out that that was only the beginning of their struggles, and I was just like, wow. So the whole thing was just an experiment to try to figure out something that has to do with the flare, this disease that came when like the sun flares happened. So I'm actually currently reading The Scorch Trials, the second book in the series, and let me tell you, it is good so far. But I really enjoyed this book. The story was so good, fast-paced, and I was on the edge of my seat the entire time. I really wanted to know what would happen. I cannot believe he came up with this. Such a good idea. Like, this is perfect for me. Honestly, the dystopian, action-packed, kind of violent, but you know what? I loved it. I loved every second of it. And the characters were pretty good for not having, basically, they don't have any background information, so they were great for that matter. And I gave this book a 4.5 out of 5 stars just because the changing thing made me so mad. If you're gonna like keep saying how the changing is like super painful and that stuff, then make it super painful and meaningful. Okay, I'm sorry, but I like this book a lot. I gave it 4.5 out of 5 stars. And yeah, I would highly recommend this book if you're into dystopians and stuff. So thank you guys so much for watching this video, and I hope I will see you guys next week.